The world is on the edge of nuclear war. Putin repeats his nuclear scare tactics with the serial production of the Oreshnik. The West is taking appropriate decisions. The situation on the battlefield, the hottest sectors of the front, the invaders advance slowly while taking huge losses. Exclusive footage of counter-operations by Ukraine's defense forces. Strikes on Shahed launch sites. Good drones hit the occupiers' military facilities every day. Angelina Jolie in Kherson, the American actress, made an unannounced visit to a city that suffers daily Russian attacks. Sex as a weapon. Candid admissions from a former Kremlin agent about the method Russia uses for espionage. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Sofia Maleshko. Here are the latest updates on Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Tell us in the comments where you're watching us from. Your support matters to us. Let's begin. Russian generals are willing to sacrifice thousands of their own soldiers for show. In Pokrovsk, Russian troops raised their flag over the administration building, only to be cleared out shortly after by Ukrainian defenders who removed the tricolor and raised the Ukrainian flag. They posted the exclusive footage online.
Flag secured.
Plus, you are the best, you are the best. Go into the shelter and stay in touch.
We advanced into the building, cleared it, destroyed the enemy there and hung the Ukrainian flag.
We've compiled the most up-to-date information from the two main axes of the occupiers' offensive.
The generals of the Russian Federation promised Kremlin leader Putin to capture Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, but they were unable to carry out the order.
Putin gave the order to capture them completely by mid-October, actually by November to be precise. Well, by the way, the original deadline was October 15th, but that deadline wasn't met. Now the next order is to capture Pokrovsk, Minograd and Konstantinovka by mid-November. Otherwise, it seems that there will be consequences. People will lose their ranks and even their heads. At the very least, the chief of the general staff and General Gerasimov will be dismissed.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced a complete clearing of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region from the occupiers.
Up to 60 Russians remain in Kupiansk. The clearing operation is underway. We will clear everything out. We know. Basically, the dates have been set. They were decided at the headquarters. We won't be sharing this information for now.
The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has urgently prepared a response. Supposedly, the Russians are advancing in the city.
The head of the Kiev regime has completely lost touch with reality, and listening to Syrsky's false reports is either totally unaware of the operational situation on the ground, or, on the contrary, understands the hopelessness of the situation and the real position of the Ukrainian armed forces in Kupiansk.
A few days before that, Putin once again reported on successes near Kupiansk. The chief of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, falsely reported to the Kremlin dictator that Russian troops had completed the encirclement of Ukrainian forces.
Your brave comrades in arms are advancing on all fronts.
However, Ukrainian forces held their positions despite the enemy shelling the crossings and attempting to break through the defenses.
The desire to seize as much territory in Donbass as possible is meant to show that they are supposedly carrying out the so-called special military operation, fulfilling their function.
Ukrainian units have already managed to regain control over part of the built-up area in the city. A military operation by Ukrainian forces is underway, aiming to cut off the enemy's supply routes and clear the city. Several units are taking part in it.
We are destroying them, but their numbers at the very least are not decreasing. That is, they are constantly bringing in, new sabotage groups keep coming in. These saboteurs avoid direct clashes with our servicemen, at the very least because they don't have enough weapons and ammunition with them.
Ukrainian units have already managed to regain control over part of the built-up area in the city. A military operation by Ukrainian forces is underway with the objective of cutting off the enemy's supply routes and clearing the city. Several units are taking part in it. In September, Russian occupiers managed to break into Kupiansk through a pipeline. Against this backdrop, the situation around the city has escalated. Now, however, the occupiers are trying to enter the city disguised as civilians. Once Ukrainian forces manage to completely cut off the supply routes and finish clearing Kupiansk, this will complicate the logistics of Russian units in this sector and may reduce their operational mobility. It took the Russian Federation Army 21 months to advance just 39 kilometers from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk. Ukrainian forces continue their defensive efforts in the Pokrovsk direction.
The soldiers often have to walk to their positions because traveling by vehicle has become too dangerous.
Russian troops continue their active offensive toward Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region.
The Russians continue.
The Russians are trying to act covertly, approaching our positions through tree lines. we managed to detect the enemy and destroy them.
In Pokrovsk itself, it is difficult to conduct combat operations using vehicles, since the city is filled with anti-tank hedgehogs and concrete triangles. The enemy's infantry mainly uses motorcycles and buggies.
They practically have no opportunity to advance further into Kupiansk. Certain measures have been taken there to prevent this, and their numbers are not increasing, but gradually decreasing. Our groups have been sent there. These are not necessarily from the main intelligence directorate or the security service.
According to the media, the Russians have concentrated a 170,000-strong army on this section of the front.
There is a clearing operation underway against those sabotage groups that managed to slip into the city between our firing positions. We need to understand that the front line is just a line on the map, but in the field, on the ground. These are firing positions, and there are certain distances between them. Saboteurs can slip through there.
What complicates the defense of the city is that the occupiers from the Russian Federation entered Pokrovsk in civilian clothes, just as they did in Kupiansk. The Russians gathered in the city posing as civilians and then began combat operations.
The groups that the Russians used, 2 or 3 people at night or somewhere, taking advantage of the terrain, they can sneak through.
The defense forces were able to replenish their supplies, reinforce their units, and stop the enemy's attempts to cut off the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad highway.
The air assault forces, Marines, and mechanized brigades are currently the main barrier for the Russians in the Pokrovsk direction. But everyone is doing a great job.
In recent days, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have had no successes in Pokrovsk. There are a total of 260 to 300 Russian servicemen in the city.
About 30% of all combat operations on the front are taking place in Pokrovsk. At the same time, 50% of Russia's use of guided aerial bombs, KABs, is directed at Pokrovsk. There are currently 260 to 300 Russians in the city.
The situation in the Kupiansk and Pokrovsk directions remains dynamic. The fighting continues. The Russian army is suffering simply enormous losses in the Pokrovsk direction. In just one day, there are hundreds killed in this area alone. Reports and local publications show there are large numbers of dead occupiers in the built-up areas and groves.
In order to save their commanders, not just their ranks, but maybe even their own heads, the Russians will throw everything they have into the fight. And no, they won't spare manpower or equipment.
Russia has allocated a staggering amount of human resources and materials to capture this city.
They slipped through. They were supposed to take some action, just not to dig in and, well, to entrench themselves. Because to hold a position, you need to have something to fight with. What do they have to fight with if they have, well, 10, maybe 20 magazines per rifle, or maybe 30, but that's it. And that's only enough for a few hours of fighting. They blocked the possibility for such groups to enter Kupiansk, tightened control, so to speak. And those who remain, well, they're basically doomed to their fate. If they want to save their lives, it would be better for them to surrender, because otherwise they will be destroyed.
Despite enormous losses, Russian commanders continue to launch wave after wave of assaults, disregarding the lives of their own soldiers just to please Putin and present any kind of advance as a victory.
Russia continues to strike civilians. Overnight, a drone attack of the city of Kamensk in the Dnipropetrovsk region set a residential building on fire. Preliminary reports say there are casualties. The exact number has not been announced. In response, good drones struck the Kostroma power plant, which supplies electricity to a significant part of Russia's central region, including defense-related industrial sites. Ukraine's defense forces also hit a warehouse holding a large number of Shaheds. The high-value target strike was first reported by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Madar Brody, and later confirmed by Ukraine's general staff. And it's not only good drones helping to disrupt Russia's aggression. Russians themselves are, too. The rebels of the Freedom of Russia have reportedly torched dozens of locomotives inside the Russian Federation. According to Ukraine's defense intelligence, these trains had been transporting weapons, ammunition, and equipment to the front. Now, it seems they'll be hauling only smoke and ashes. Intelligence says partisans destroyed control and power system for dozens of rail cars. Such attacks have seriously disrupted the occupiers' supply tempo. Russia's depots are now facing a true train collapse. Nuclear war, unfortunately, feels closer than ever. After the announcement of nuclear tests in the United States by Donald Trump and in response to Russia's earlier threats in the Oreshnik tests, Putin said he would initiate preparations for nuclear testing.
And submit agreed proposals on the possible start of work to prepare tests of nuclear weapons.
Putin speaks of an adequate response and claims he's not threatening anyone. But anyone familiar with the criminal slang the Russian dictator knows so well will recognize this for what it is: intimidation. Putin is also deeply unnerved by reports of US plans to deploy the Dark Eagle system in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region.
In the United States, by the end of the current year, it is planned to adopt a new medium-range system, Dark Eagle, with hypersonic missiles and a firing range of 5,000 kilometers. The flight time of such a missile from the territory of Germany, where this missile system is to be stationed, to targets in central Russia will be about 6 to 7 minutes.
As we can see, the dictator who wields the nuclear cudgel doesn't like receiving an adequate response himself. Has the US president managed to persuade Xi Jinping to distance himself from the Kremlin amid the war in Ukraine? By the way, the US and China have signed a trade agreement aimed at restoring economic balance, protecting national security, and supporting workers and businesses. The deal was signed in South Korea by US President Donald Trump and China's President Xi Jinping, according to the White House. My colleagues will break this down.
A truce or the calm before the storm? China has announced the suspension of an additional 24% tariff on American goods. The relief will last for a year, but at the same time, the base tariff of 10%, which was introduced in response to a similar tariff by Trump announced in April, remains in place.
The US is the largest market for goods, and China is the largest producer of goods. How does China make money? By supplying its products to the largest markets. As we noted, the US is the primary one.
The decision on the new agreement was made after a meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, according to Reuters. Thanks to this, tariffs of up to 15% on certain types of agricultural products from the US have also been lifted.
From an economic standpoint, China and the US cannot really be in different, let's say, not just camps, but be adversaries. In fact, they are in different camps since they are competing over which of them is the leading economy.
China's Ministry of Finance noted that starting March 4th, they will suspend all tariffs on soybeans and other US agricultural products, including corn, wheat, sorghum, and chicken. It was stated that this decision was made in accordance with the consensus reached during economic and trade consultations between China and the US.
Therefore, despite all the political ambitions and attempts to show that we can compete, that we will be leaders, and so on and so forth, I emphasize from the perspective of China's economic interests, it needs the US.
The US and China have also agreed to establish direct communication between their armed forces. As stated by Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, this will help prevent potential conflicts between the countries. Another step China has taken towards the US is its refusal to import Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, major state-owned companies and smaller private enterprises in China have canceled nearly half of their oil shipments from Russia after the US imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil in October. And
when the question arises of whom China will choose, Russia or the US, it's important to understand a simple thing. There's the US, and just one state, the largest one, California. California's economy is twice the size of Russia's economy, just one state. The United States of America is like two Russian economies. Naturally, for China, the US is much more important than Russia.
Putin absolutely does not want to lose one of his few remaining partners, so he sent his prime minister with greetings to Beijing. As a result of the negotiations, the parties signed about 10 documents on cooperation in the fields of energy, space, and high technology.
Russia is of interest to China as a supplier of raw materials and goods. But Russia doesn't really have much choice except to sell everything to China. China understands that Russia depends on it and that Russia won't take any steps against it. And with America, what's interesting is that it's a sales market.
According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, Russia is sinking ever deeper into economic dependence on China. Raw material projects in the Far East and Siberia are turning the region into a resource base for China, while local communities remain excluded from the promised benefits.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
A former Putin intelligence officer has revealed how FSB agents in short skirts hunt and seduce top IT specialists in the United States to extract technology secrets for Moscow. Trust us, the story is more than intriguing.
Putin's girls make sure American counterintelligence never gets bored. The Kremlin sends its skirt-wearing spies right into the Holy of Holies, California, a place where political influence, vast sums of money, and the technologies of the future are concentrated. 20% of all active FBI cases related to counterintelligence and intellectual property involve Silicon Valley. This is exactly where former American counterintelligence officers comment for the publication Politico. You can clearly see the interests of the Russians and how they operate.
According to one former official, sex workers targeted top executives in elite bars and nightclubs such as Rosewood Sand Hill, an ultra-luxurious hotel near Silicon Valley's leading financial firms, notorious for its raucous Thursday night mixers, as well as the Redwood Room, a prestigious hotel bar. The Clift in downtown San Francisco and other establishments were identified as potentially passing information to Russian intelligence agents. If I were a Russian intelligence officer and knew that these high-class women were taking CEOs of major companies up to their rooms, I would pay them for information too, this person said. That's exactly the idea of concentric circles. You just need to be on the inside. It's enough to have someone on the inside whom you have access to.
The method of catching the right person in a honey trap is one of the most popular among Russian intelligence agencies. FSB agents actively practice it inside the country against opponents of the system, let alone abroad, where there is such reverence for exotic Russian matryoshkas. Former Putin sex agent Alia Rosa, who is now building a new honest life in Los Angeles, told the New York Post how Russian girls lure IT specialists into their nets. First, they skillfully catch the target's eye, and then they start bombarding him with their love, creating a strong psychological attachment of the target to the agent.
They create a bond where you and they understand each other and the whole rest of the world is bad, you see? They also use fear, create stressful situations, employ FOMO, the fear of missing out. For example, oh my God, we have to do this right now. If you don't give me this data, this information right now, I'll be punished. You'll lose me forever. In other words, they create this kind of fear. You have a strong connection, you text each other every day, you know everything about each other, what you eat, how much sugar you put in your coffee, everything. You get used to this kind of connection, and then your fake girlfriend says, oh my God, if you don't tell me about this, I'll disappear from your life forever and you'll never see me again.
According to a former sex agent, this works because people who are tech-savvy and handle billions are susceptible to manipulations involving their ego and sense of self-importance. But interestingly, experts note that when a sex agent is exposed, their victims prefer to keep quiet.
Most people are terribly naive when it comes to espionage and technology theft. First, they assume that this doesn't happen. Second, they don't know how to recognize suspicious behavior, they don't know what to look out for. And third, if something really is compromised or stolen, they are often afraid or embarrassed to report it, fearing damage to their reputation.
In cases where information about data breaches was confirmed and companies failed to take action, even former US counterintelligence officers themselves complained anonymously. According to them, Russians, along with and Chinese in Silicon Valley, are testing out all the latest recruitment and pressure tactics. And once these methods are implemented and tested here, they will be used in other states as well.
Women are serial killers and the cause of all Russia's woes. That's the kind of claim unhinged representatives of the Russian Orthodox Church are making on the federal TV. And this week, propagandist Vladimir Solovyov had yet another hysterical meltdown. What set him off this time? Let's watch.
The past week in Russia has once again proven that there is no bottom to the abyss. From church councils advising to hide infidelity and give birth after assault, to deputies' candid propagandist fantasies and collecting money after rejoicing in others' misfortunes. A unique form of madness has descended upon the country.
I don't know, of course, what you people are sniffing over there, but at least try to exhale once in a while. But your lies are honestly so incredibly laughable and truly vulgar that, well...
Just imagine, in Russia, a new way to strengthen the institution of the family has appeared by keeping silent.
Well, a person should act reasonably here, because being honest doesn't mean you have to announce to everyone on every corner what has happened within us.
Metropolitan Rostislav suggested not acknowledging marital infidelity, but simply confessing it during confession. According to the clergyman, this way you can preserve the marriage without destroying it with the truth.
It is much more important to cleanse your conscience in the sacrament of repentance and to come to confession, to repent of this sin.
Once again, the Russian Orthodox Church reminded women of their place, next to their husband, preferably not straying far from him. Priest Andrei Strutsky stated that a woman without a man is like a leaf blown here and there. After all, according to him, she needs support and guidance so as not to stray from the right path. That is,
if there is no man, a woman is blown about like a leaf. Because she was made to be part of a man, she cannot exist on her own.
Meanwhile, deputies in the Sverdlovsk region continue to surprise with new ideas about the female body. This time, the People's Deputy Vyacheslav Wegner suggested not allowing abortions even after rape, but instead giving birth to the child and putting them up for adoption.
This is a living life, and today, at this very moment, others are in need of this living life. There are many childless couples who, unfortunately, cannot have children of their own. And I think that maybe here we should be doing different work. But this child could live in another family. Life must exist. If it has begun, then it was convenient for the Lord.
And in Ryazan, sermons about morality are once again being heard. Bishop Peterim reported that after abortion restrictions, the official statistics went down, but there is one but.
And now our women are not giving birth. Women are refusing to give birth, but now, thank God, the leadership of our country has become concerned with this issue. And now the number of abortions is being limited. But there is another shadow statistic that no one is counting. Now, women have started coming at night and having abortions that are being recorded. Night abortions, night miscarriages, night cleanings, call it whatever you want. And
as usual, of course, the women are to blame. The clergyman did not mince words, calling them serial killers and blaming them for all the country's troubles.
And this doctor who performs the abortion, he's an executioner who not only washes his hands in blood, he's covered in blood. He's covered in blood up to the very top of his head, that executioner. And these women, they are serial killers.
In addition, Solovyov reported that captured Ukrainian soldiers allegedly say they are not fighting for their own country, but because the authorities have taken their families hostage. The story is, to put it mildly, impressive.
And when they are captured and spoken to, they say, how can we surrender? They've taken our families hostage. These are men, moreover, from Russian-speaking regions of Ukraine. They say, well, God forbid something happens and they find out we surrendered ourselves. They're our own people. They say they're capable of anything. That's why we can't do it.
And finally, some good news. American film star Angelina Jolie visited Kherson, a city liberated from occupation but still suffering daily artillery and drone strikes that frequently kill civilians. We thank the actress for her courage and support. And thank you to everyone supporting Ukraine. That's all for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and leave a comment. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Strength and courage to our defenders. Glory to Ukraine.